Well, so thank you, Brielle, for doing this meeting with me, this talk. I consider this a gift to my people who, in the Raising Clarity wing of the beloved community. I really appreciate you doing it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to connect with you more and your community as well.
Thank you. Um, it's pretty wonderful. Would you like to introduce yourself and just also self-define, like
Yeah,
who are you and what are you up to?
absolutely. So I'm Brielle Ringer, and I'm a breathwork alchemist, somatic coach,
Mm.
wellness educator, vegan fairy goddess. Um,
Kitchen witch. I remember you described
yes,
yourself that way one time.
yeah, absolutely. Still very much resonate with that. And I specifically these days really support a lot of advocates, social justice leaders, people who are really committed to collective healing and liberation, and to help those of us on that path really embody the freedom that we're fighting for. Because something that I've seen a lot in the change making and social justice spaces is there's a lot of burnout, a lot of overwhelm, exhaustion, and I experienced that myself too, coming from a background in social work. And I've been on this journey now for about 10 years of really decolonizing from grind culture that like we have to do everything like right
Mm.
now, fast, 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 better,
Mm.
bigger, more, and learning how to like slow down and really listen to the wisdom of my body that is always lovingly guiding us in the
Mm.
direction that we need to go. But we actually have to like slow down and get quiet enough to hear that guidance. And I feel that that's something
Mm.
that we need more of in our movement spaces to center joy, to center healing and connection, because the same kind of like scattered, frazzled, burnt out energy that's fueling our oppression is not going to help us get free. And so let's embody another way because I know that when
Mm.
I do, I feel so much better in my body. I show up so much more powerfully. My vision for what's possible is so much more expansive. And so I know that this is like a really critical piece of helping us sustain ourselves in our advocacy and leadership, and also really like take it to the next level of what's possible for us, really paving new ways for the next generation.
Mhm. And the old generation.
Yes, for all of us, for all of
Just
us.
saying, yeah. I mean,
And
I've been doing movement work since the '80s, and I used to really. It's definitely fueled what I do with Raising Clarity,
yeah.
because the burnout that you're talking about, I lost all my adrenal function in my 20s, and through Chinese medicine, I got it all back. It was not a big deal, but I was like, oh, I have a carrying capacity, just like the earth. I have a carrying capacity, and if I don't pay attention to it, I can't do anything. I'm just going to burn out like real quick.
Yeah.
And I watch people eat unhealthily and just be unhealthily. And I love grind culture. Grind culture is a great phrase. So this is
Yeah.
very exciting. In a wonderful way. I feel like I've come full circle having this conversation with you, whom I met through living room conversations, and doing some work together and just being on a small staff together. And I've watched your progress with Be Well with Brielle, and then lately been noticing this, embodying the freedom that you're fighting for. And I might have a question about the word fighting, but I'm like
Yeah.
embodying the freedom that, whatever we're working for, whatever. Because I even work, some people have a negative response to the word work. And I'm like, I love the word work. But
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, totally love the people that you're serving. And just that niche has been around, right? So what is that, like, 40 years, 45 years,
Yeah.
if not longer.
Right.
And I think there are a few people who have tapped that secret, who have kind of unpacked that, and you're one of them. So I feel like a lot of my people are also your people, and this is exciting. I hope it's okay that what I want to talk about, because everyone who's watching this is now going to say, oh, wait, but I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
But what I'm offering people are these two posts of yours that have been on LinkedIn. And I mentioned them to you, and I'm going to really be guided by them. Um, so I was really moved by this post, and I just want to very slowly scroll. And I can also put the address so on the screen so people can find it. So when you say master your emotions, you do not mean conquer them by any means.
Right.
Um, that was one piece that really struck me.
Mhm.
It's this learning to feel it all fully.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love that you're acknowledging to people that you don't teach them things so that you can feel good all the time. Because I think feeling good all the time is a pipe dream, and I actually think it's kind of a distraction
Absolutely.
for people. And I don't know, it's like it's a distraction from the work at hand. It's a way of comparing ourselves to others. It's just no good at all. It's like no help at all to always focus. And yet our culture is just constantly, it's interesting, right? Grind culture, and yet it's also focused on feeling good, feeling good, feeling good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I want to see if there's what enables you, first of all, to ride the highs and lows that you described in building this practice and building your business. That to me, I work with people who are passionate about the work they want to do or their calling, and yet they might be scared to take the leap. And there's a huge amount of vagaries and vicissitudes that create that thing that you described so beautifully. Would you talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
that has been a huge part of my journey and being able to show up and do this work is, in those moments when the doubt or the grief or the frustration comes, to not be stopped by it, but to actually have a process to move through it and
Mm.
not be stopped by it, but also not pretend that it's not there. And just be
Right.
like, oh, I'm fine, everything's okay, like just keep
Mm.
pushing. Those are kind of the contrasts that I see happening often is avoid it altogether, pretend it's not there, get stopped by it completely. And so I had to find the middle path there of how do I acknowledge that, okay, doubt is present and this doesn't have to define me. This doesn't have to stop where I'm going and what I'm committed to. And so for me, emotional alchemy is the process
Mm.
of allowing those emotions to come as they arise and having the capacity to feel it. And then, you know, I try not to focus so much on like changing the state. Like you said, it's not
Mm.
about mastering your emotions, like conquering them. It's about feeling them. And feeling them then kind of naturally shifts the state of it rather than
Yes.
trying to like, oh, how do I get rid of this? How do I release my anger, release my grief? It's you feel it. And then it naturally changes state into something else or becomes a little less heavy to carry. And this is something I've really had to practice over the years, or chose. I didn't have to, I chose to practice um,
Right.
because I used to have a really hard time crying and feeling my emotions and was on the side of like avoidance and suppressing how I felt and kind of numbing out through partying or alcohol or substances.
Mm.
Many years, like when I was in high school, early college. So I started this
Mm-hmm.
journey early on and
Mm.
thankfully, shifted paths and really decided, I mean, my body kind of decided that we had to do things differently, as
Right.
often happens when we are not in the process of feeling and alchemizing our emotions and in that avoidance. Because I didn't want to look at it, my body then I started having recurring health problems
Mm.
about almost 10 years ago now. And
Oh,
so my
wow.
body was like, hello, hello, please give us some love. Like, we need you to take a look at some things. And I really got the clarity
Mm.
in that healing process of how important and really truly how connected the mind, body, spirit is. And when we are avoiding those denser emotions, those challenging, painful parts in our lives, that it comes up one way or another, you know? And
Right.
so that's how I started to learn this process of choosing to feel the emotions and allow them to come up. And in the process of like learning to sit with the grief and the anger
Mm,
and the frustration, I also then expanded my capacity for joy. You know, I
mm,
felt like so much more aliveness and passion that I had not felt before, or maybe since I was like a child, that state of childlike joy was like coming back online
mm.
in a way that was
Wow.
really incredible. And so that's the beautiful part of it is that it goes both ways. When you expand your capacity for the uncomfortable things, you're also expanding your capacity to hold more of all the goodness that you really deeply desire in your life.
Mm. So, did you craft this approach yourself?
It's been a crafting over the years. It's changed states throughout my journey. Right now, the way that it looks is it's through a breathwork journey, so emotional alchemy breathwork.
Okay.
And I learned breathwork. I was trained in breathwork about 3, 4 years ago. And it's a three-part breath that's all in and out through the mouth. It's into the belly, into the heart, and out. And
Mm,
it's like a long about 30 to 60-minute journey of really just
mm,
sitting with yourself and with the breath. And breathing in that way is uncomfortable. And that's kind of part of the point. Is it
mm,
meets your edge. You're like, oh, I don't want to do this. But the more that you can just surrender and be with the discomfort, then those uncomfortable emotions come up too. Of seeing where you've been resisting, leaning into that also. And so that's a big part of the way that I practice emotional alchemy is going through a journey that way. And especially when I'm working with clients, that's one of the main tools that I use. But now I feel like I can actually just let the emotions come naturally, that
mhm,
I've been in this practice for some time now, that usually it just comes up like most recently, like Friday. I just felt some big emotions stirring in me, like the frustration, some impatience, and I was just like, that sensation of like feeling like you're gonna explode, of everything just kind of
mm,
building upon.
mm.
And I didn't need a whole breathwork journey. I just kind of needed to vent and cry. And so I just did that. I had my little moment and then it
Wow.
passed through. And so now I don't need a whole hour-long breathwork journey. I can actually just within 10 minutes kind of get straight to the heart of it, have the release, have a good cry, laugh and be like, "Oh, okay, I feel better now."
Wow. And you can do that on your own.
I do that on my own, yes.
Right. And so your goal is for clients to be able to do that on their own. And initially you're accompanying them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Wow.
Help them see where to look. Oh, I see. Let's lean in there a little bit more. Okay, I'm feeling maybe there's some anger there. Let's look at that. Let's see what's there. So yeah, having
Mm,
a witness in the beginning is really powerful. And even when I, vented on Friday to help move things out, my partner was a witness and was like,
mm.
you know, I really need a moment to just like let it
Let
all
go of
out. Can
this.
you hold the
Right.
space for me?
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Are people ever, so I have a lot of trauma that I've worked through and it's still coming, but mostly it's pretty healed. I think sometimes and I think other people feel that they're going to be overwhelmed, they're going to drown, and they're never going to be able to come out of it. Once they feel it, this like tip of the iceberg, there's so much of the iceberg. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly, it's such a wise part of us that is in the state of avoidance because
Mm,
it's a protective mechanism.
yeah.
It's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back up. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get myself out of this if I allow myself to feel the weight that I've been carrying, the weight of the
Mm,
world, the weight of my past traumas. And so yeah, just a lot of love and compassion for anyone who's there because, again, it's just a way that you're protecting yourself. Um, but what I have found is what we resist persists, and feeling can free us. And
mm,
so, for the people who are like hesitant to go there, especially in the way that I've experienced it and guide it is that yes, we're gonna touch in to the discomfort. We're gonna touch into the painful parts, but we're also gonna touch into the places of peace and ease and like loving
Mm,
support, feeling, when I'm guiding an
mm,
experience before we go there, it's like really anchoring into feeling held and supported by the chair that you're sitting on, held
mm,
and supported by the earth that's always lovingly holding you in every breath and every step you take,
mm,
lovingly held and supported by thousands of ancestors who have come before you, who
mm,
are here to hold you. I'm here to hold you in my guidance through this practice. And so there's a lot of safety that's cultivated first, so it feels like, oh, okay, this is a place that I can go there.
mhm,
And then we touch into it and let whatever needs to come up and out be
mm,
witnessed and felt through.
mm,
And then it's also like what's on the other side of that is the, oh my God, I didn't realize everything I've been carrying. I feel so much better. It's the giggle that happens after a good cry. And
mhm,
so I feel that even though we're able to
mm,
go into like really in comfortable places, whether I'm supporting an activist who's feeling the weight of grief from genocide that's happening in Palestine, or
mm,
whatever that is that they're carrying, or someone personally who's healing through sexual trauma, like we're able to go there, but every single time they leave feeling lighter. Every single
mm,
time they leave with like a smile on their face. And I think that
mm,
that's just profound and so beautiful and speaks to again that your capacity for grief expands your capacity for joy and love,
mm.
the liberation that you've always really been wanting. It's inside of you, and we touch into it so you know how to guide yourself back to that sanctuary that's always within, but sometimes we just have to like dig a little bit more to get there.
So in the post that I showed, you're using that very practice to help you be a business owner, to help you be a young woman. I think you identify as a woman of color who's building a practice, like really like from your body, from your mind, from your spirit, from your soul. And that's a hard thing. That can really be challenging. And I just, the vulnerability that you showed, and the details, the specific details in that post, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that one too. It's hard, and it's. I think it holds people back from their vision, not to if they don't have a way to access that. And some of that I know how to do, and then I like sharing methodologies and approaches and whole energy patterns that other people bring that can inspire people to be bolder, be less beholden to the capitalist machine, be able to generate money, figure out the money piece, whatever that flow is in and out. um, but it's not money responds to us, it responds to our energy, and we need to shift our energy a lot of the time, and trauma will keep us down in a financial way as much as anything else. Family patterns, ancestry, all the stuff that I bring with me as a child of, I'm second generation US. All of that stuff can really hold us back. And so this is definitely a way of freedom. And I guess I was really moved by the details that you were sharing. And I've watched you succeed. I've watched you take enormous joy in your work and be really proud of your work. And there's pride that's exclusive and like I'm better than you, and there's pride that's inclusive. I've never really thought about that, but I feel like that's something that you're doing. It's like, here's this beautiful work I'm doing. I'm really proud of it. Here's all the people I'm doing it with. Just this is what it looks like. Isn't that amazing? And not be afraid to make a call to action. Say, if you want to work with me, this is what to do. Because if like selling is offering something to someone at their request, our job is to create the conditions for the request. I mean, I know from fundraising, like an A grade is 50%, like about half the time someone's going to say yes. Usually in my experience, it's more. But we have to be putting ourselves out there. We have to be vulnerable. It is incredibly vulnerable making to be a business owner, and of these kinds of businesses, I think especially. So I was really fascinated by your successes and your failures. A lot of people don't want to talk about their failures. It's
Mhm.
like failures are so important. They're
Yeah.
just so important.
Absolutely. I love everything that you're touching on here and that like pride that's inclusive. I love that distinction there because yeah, absolutely. I really want, especially other women of color who are wanting to step into their gifts, wanting to be of service in the world, but in a way that is really nourishing to their soul, like healthy, sustainable, generative. And so I want to show, not just the successes, but here are the hurdles that have come along the way because I think sometimes, especially in the age of social media, we can just see the
Mm,
highlights of people's lives and their
right,
accomplishments and get into comparison of like, oh, why hasn't it happened for me yet? Or those
right.
stories and narratives that come up. And so I want people to know that yes, this is possible, and it's gonna take radical devotion.
That's a great phrase.
Yes.
Right.
And keep showing up because, yeah, there are going to be no's that come along the way. There's going to be challenges and setbacks. And that doesn't mean that it's not for you. It's just an opportunity to deepen the way that you're showing up. It's like providing really good lessons for how you show up differently moving forward. And so, yeah, it's really important for me to be
Mm,
more transparent in that. So, that when someone else steps into the path, that they're aware of the potential obstacles that are ahead of us. And that doesn't mean it's like limiting self-belief or,
no.
limited thinking. It's just if you're going to climb a mountain, you should know how hard it's going to be before you just jump right into it and then feel like a failure because you didn't get it right the first time.
Right. I don't feel like there's a lot of models out there. Two kinds. One, models in the movement, or models for somebody who may be wanting to transition, like your people do, to following their calling in social justice. The models, at least that I know, have often been terrible. They're getting better, but it was a rare day when somebody would post about something like mindset, would write about something in the Grassroots Fundraising Journal, which I adore and miss a lot. That was kind of my universe, was social activists and justice fundraising. Um, and then there's not very many models in the wider culture for anything between success, like instant success, and failure. But
Mhm.
this metaphor of the mountain is like I enter into a very intimate relationship with the universe when I say this is my calling and this is what I stand for and this is where I'm going. The universe says, "Oh yeah, okay. So you want to really change the world here. This is a big ask, and we're going to make sure you're ready for it. And we're going to throw some hurdles your way. We're going to throw some distractions your way, possibly. We're going to tease you with like a partial success. Is this enough for you? Like a job instead of going off on your own. There's so many magical things that happen, and it's this very intimate dance with the universe, almost like lovemaking, where we start to really tune in to our calling, and then also tune into what they really are kind of the same thing, like the higher self. What's the universe saying? And how do I interpret those messages? Like I have a blog post on reversals, disappointment. So part of my training has been as a Sufi, and a Sufi finds joy in sudden disappointment is the phrase. And so my partner says it now, and it's like, oh, this is absolutely not what I wanted. I didn't think I was asking for this. My higher self must have been asking for this. What am I getting out of this disappointment? And my point in the post is that it's a very intimate message. It's not like what we get in the wider culture. It's not some negative thing like you should just go back to, I don't know, some big corporation and work and earn a salary, or I don't know what, I don't want to badmouth anything, but no, it's a, like when my building burned down, my first thought was, God thinks I'm a badass. That was my thought. I'm like, I know I don't get anything that I can't handle. God must really think I'm a badass. I guess I must be a badass. And so it was a whole, I mean, a lot of people in my town didn't take it that way, but some did. And so anyway, it was interesting. Please let me let you talk.
Yes. No, everything you're speaking to really, really resonating of what gets put on our plate is for us. It's not against us. It's life is not happening to us. It's really happening for us. And that's the path of the
Mm,
alchemist, to take all of the pain, all of the challenges, and okay, how do I turn this into fuel for my future? How is this crafting me
mm,
into who I'm really supposed to be, who I'm really committed to being, how I really want to show up in
Mm,
the world.
mm. Love it. And I love what your body's doing while you're talking about it. Right. It's for us. You know, pronoia, the whole idea of pronoia. Oh, there's a book called Pronoia, which is like the antithesis of paranoia. It's the idea that the universe is out to love you. That's
Mm,
basically what it is. It's a whole book on that. It's a
love
really
that.
cool book. That's great. And
Yeah,
I'm
that's
also
right
thinking
up
of
my alley.
uh, yeah, exactly. We can, and that's a decision. I mean, I grew up with some cynical people, and I feel that way. The universe is definitely for me. It's such a mirror. The external is such a mirror of the internal. I also want to give a shout out to a book called On Becoming an Alchemist, which is a great book. Okay, I want to look at your other LinkedIn post. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share that. Do I have that? Yeah, that's the right one. Okay. This is fun. Okay, cool. Share. Great. And I'm going to hide me again so people can see more. So here's this wonderful post. This is like your New Year's post, kind of the end of the year recap and self-examination. I'm a big one for self-examination. You can really tell this isn't bragging. This is some amazing stuff you've done and that you have all the numbers to back it up exactly. And bringing up studies, you really touched my heart when you talked about studies. I think learning constantly is really important.
Mhm.
And this giving that you began doing, teaching yoga and mindfulness at the prison and youth group homes. And then a lot of the biggest stuff can't be quantified.
Yes.
And then this video at the end, it's so sweet. And so, again, proud, inclusive, proud. Look at that. Like, I can't not smile when when I watch this. Mm, wow. Beautiful, beautiful footage.
Thank you.
Mm, gorgeous. It's hard for me to tear myself away from this video. Okay. Totally fascinating. Yeah, sacred rage. Ooh, good
Big
you've
part of the
died.
emotional alchemy journey for me, sacred.
Right?
Yeah.
Rage is rage is really important. Rage is a big one, I think, especially for people identified as female.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, I'm gonna come back. That's hard, but it's lovely. People can watch it.
Yeah,
Um,
just really quickly on the point about,
yeah,
sacred
please.
rage being important for women and one of the
Please.
points that I highlighted, like deepening my studies. When we're talking about emotional alchemy, I just want to uplift also, because we both, and probably people in the community, have maybe experienced burnout or been on the edges of it. That emotional exhaustion is one of the main pillars of burnout and it
Mm,
has the most significant negative outcomes on health, relationships, work, especially for women.
mm,
And women are at a much higher risk of suffering from chronic pain, migraines, fibromyalgia, IBS, autoimmune conditions. And a lot of this is a result of the way that women move through the world as what's called human giver syndrome. It's
mm.
called burnout, the secret to unlocking the stress cycle. And it's this burden of unpaid labor through emotional labor, through childcare, through house care, and all of the things. And
Mm.
it's really essentially the toll of patriarchy on women's health.
That's
And
a great way to put it.
so yeah, this is another reason that emotional alchemy is so important to me. Like, this is literally it's public health crisis that we're in right now, and the opportunity there of, especially when I get to work with other women who have families, who are leaders, they then pave the way for like every other woman to come after them and
Mm,
everyone, period. But especially, to be an example that I didn't grow up with women who were emotionally healthy, who were doing purposeful, meaningful work, who were making good money. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm going to be the woman in the family who does that.
Right.
Oh.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So, what are some of the symptoms of emotional exhaustion? How can you tell?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the ways that you can tell is if you are feeling like you are starting to your kind of patience is just a little bit more thin, like you notice yourself getting a little snappy either with people who you work with, or
Mm,
sometimes we're holding it together at work and then we come home and with our family
mm,
or our loved ones, that's when it starts to come out. And if you
mm,
take a step back, you're like, okay, you're able to acknowledge that you've been a little more tense and it's been going on. Like that happens naturally occasionally, but if
mm,
it's been going on for a longer period of time, if
mm,
you find that you are crying
mm,
uncontrollably, like I know
mm,
for myself, that was one of my tipping
mm,
points when I was like, okay, I need help. Like I was sitting at my
mm.
screen and tears were just
Oh,
streaming down my eyes, and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm crying.
right,
So if you're
right.
in that boat, like that's another
Oh,
really big way to identify it. And you might also be experiencing chronic pain, pain
mm,
that might be unexplainable. Like maybe you've even been going to the doctor and
mm-hmm,
it's like, oh, everything's fine. You're like physically in your body, things are not fine. Well, have had clients who come to me, we do a breathwork session, we do the emotional alchemy process. They're like, oh wow, the chronic pain that I've been feeling in my chest and in my shoulders is gone. It's like, yes, there's a strong correlation between our physical pain that we're experiencing and the emotional pain. Like it's processed the same way in our brain. And so when you feel
mm.
emotion you've been carrying and let it move through, that is like physically you can actually feel lighter.
Absolutely. I feel like the physical body is just a denser version of the spiritual body, the subtle body.
Yep.
It's really all the same stuff. Very interesting. So I often find when people tell me that they're exhausted, I propose to them in coaching that we're talking about resistance, that
Mm,
the resistance itself is exhausting. So first of all, a lot of times in the movement, we are resisting. We're
yes,
resisting something that should be resisted. We're not as focused on what we are building, which I think is a problem
absolutely.
in some, and we can, another conversation.
Yeah.
But emotionally, it's exhausting to be resisting what's out there, but also to be resisting the emotions that we're feeling, to be resisting whatever's going on in our family life or at work. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about resistance?
Yeah, and I think it's again that wanting to be strong and keep going. Like that
Mm,
again, the fear of if I let myself feel this, am I going to be able to show up the next day for
yeah,
all of the things that I'm committed to?
right.
And so, yeah, the resistance in that way, uh, absolutely, I see.
That's great. Um, I was delighted and just again moved to see that this was the year, and it may not have just been this year, that you began giving your work away. Do you mind talking about that? I've been really interested in generosity. I practice it, I think about it a lot, I experience it, I just want to hear about it. That's a generosity that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Tell a story about that, maybe.
Absolutely. So this is actually something that's been pretty consistent in the creation of my business and over the years, and it changes shape occasionally. But one way that I've done this is I'll apply for grants, and then I use grant funding to then
Mm,
give my work away to communities who otherwise
wow.
not be able to afford and access this work. And so the first time that I did that was back in 2020, during the pandemic, and George Floyd had just been murdered.
Mm,
And I was like, I want to do something, and I want to do something that's authentic to me. And
mm-hmm,
so I created a 6 or 7 or 8 something week-long program for Black women for
mm,
healing. It was a healing space for Black women. And
wow.
I raised money. I just did that crowdfunding myself the first time of,
Okay.
hey, I want to do this thing. I want to give this away and create a healing space for Black women who would like to support this. And
Mm,
raised about $3,500, had a group of 30 Black women
Mm,
online healing together through this really precarious time, you know? And it was so powerful, such a joy for me, and then just became a pattern in my work that I then applied for grants to lead the program again, supporting Black women going vegan, healing
mm,
holistically. So I got a lot of funding from the vegan movement to do
mm,
that for 2 years. And then I started to shift and was like, oh, I really want to focus on advocate well-being and advocate healing. And so I recently got a grant to do that and give my work away to animal advocates and
mm,
work with nonprofits in the movement. And so for me, it's this beautiful balance of where I get to give back. And as a Black woman, I get to still be paid and compensated for my work in the world because
yep.
it's a delicate dance there of giving and being generous and being self-sacrificing, where it's like I still need to be resourced. I still do
Mm,
my best work when I am resourced and supported. And so I love that model of raise the funds, get paid, still give back. So that's an element of my work that's been really consistent over the
mm,
years. And just recently, since November, I partnered with an organization called Kula for Karma. And
mm,
they have a very similar mission of bringing yoga
mm,
into prisons, foster
mm,
homes, homeless shelters, places that,
mm.
again, would not have access to this typically. And I was like, oh, yeah, sign me up, love what you're doing. And they're local. They
Oh,
have
wow.
things that are going on locally. And so I got connected with them. And so now I teach. Like 3 classes at the foster home, and the class
Mm,
that I really, really love is at the prison. And I
mhm,
4 mindfulness meditation classes in a row on Fridays and
mm.
see about 130 people during that. And
Wow.
it's so, so nourishing and so beautiful, especially the people who are like really leaning in and open and so grateful and getting
Mm.
a lot from it, you know? So it's been really, really a joy to be there.
I'm really seeing that ripple out. So then when those people get out, their lives, I mean, their lives interchanging. I'm really interested in the work of the prison ashram
Mm,
program, which is part of the Human Kindness Foundation, and they send materials free in prisons. And people write, and I read their newsletter about how the transformative this is while they're in. Right? Some people are never going to get out. There are people who write in that are there for life,
mm,
unfortunately. But I'm also just thinking about the ripple to their families, even if they are inside. We know that it changes the external to change the internal. So, okay, this is a real moment. What gave you, I would say, the chutzpah to say, you know what, I want to give this work away and I want to be paid for it? What was that? How did that happen? How did you do that? How did you not just say, oh, I'm not a good person if I don't just give this away?
yeah. Mm, that's a good question. I'm trying to put myself back to where I
Right.
was 4 years ago when I first decided to do that. And I think part of it is I've done the Landmark Forum and
Oh, yeah.
in a couple of their programs, their whole curriculum for living. And part of the self-expression and leadership program is
Mm.
you create a project.
Oh.
And that's not, the Black Women's Healing Haven wasn't the project that I created, but it definitely planted the seeds
Mm-hmm.
how to create something like that.
Wow.
And so that definitely was a part of it
Mm.
of
Were
how
you to be paid for that in that
no, not with
program?
that.
Okay.
So that is, it's still the distinction there. I
Mm-hmm.
can't really recall exactly what it was. I think it's just this understanding of a dynamic that I want to shift within advocacy spaces
Mm.
of that's part of the burnout is people are underpaid. People do more than
Majorly.
they have capacity to do. They feel like I myself have been that of like, yes, 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 yes. And then there's nothing left for me at the end of the day. It's like I
Right.
have bills that I have to pay and I want to do meaningful work in the world. And so I'm gonna have my cake and eat it too, and I'm just gonna put it out there and see how it lands.
And it's landed really well. And that in that just in that alone is you're such a model. I was just giving support to someone, who's gotten an internship and is very excited about it. And at first I posted publicly and then I took it down and I asked their permission. Like I wanted to ask, is this paid?
Yeah.
And I got their permission to make that. But I was like, I know this, I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on their
Yeah.
achievement, right? Like I'm so excited. And yet at the same time, it's just exactly what you're talking about. It's just exactly what you're talking about. It's just we want to do good work in the world and we want to be paid. There's no contradiction there. That I grew up with there's being this implicit contradiction. Like we should be grateful for getting the terrible wages that we were getting in whatever movement work I was doing. I think that is big in helping me become a fundraiser. It's really funny. So I just wondered, where did that chutzpah come from? I did EST in 1979, which was the precursor, like long, long ago, to Landmark in the Forum. It's really interesting. People have mentioned that piece about creating a program in the world. Very interesting. Wow, there's so much. I feel like I had another question for you. Um, I really love that LinkedIn post. I'm going to pop back to that and see if I can remember what it was. This is a very technical question, but what kind of tracking do you do? It sounds from that post that you do like very specific tracking of the
Yeah.
engagements that you have.
Part of that is because when I do grant funding,
Oh,
I'm
right.
able to report back, and when I'm applying for grants, they like to see some of the like
The
hard
numbers.
numbers. Like, yeah, exactly. What's your impact? How many people are you serving?
Oh,
All of
yeah, yeah, right.
and so I have before been a very speaking to more of the intangibles, but I've been able to now see the value of tracking both, you know? And so that's part of it. And my tracking system is, I keep, after I do an event, I just make note of how many people were there. I have like a document where I keep
Mm,
note of all of those things. And I've gotten a lot better about that this year. And
mm,
actually, this year was applying for a bigger grant that
mm.
I went back and I had to backtrack because I wasn't doing good at that
Oh,
note taking. And so I was
uh-huh.
backtracking like how many people I've served in the last few years. I'm like, okay, yeah, now I need to track this just regularly, keep this in.
Right. It's part of being your own entrepreneur. You are your own entrepreneur, right? You're not only doing the work, you're marketing your work, you're developing your work, you're selling your work with a real positive feeling around the word selling, all that stuff. Yeah, when I first met, you were the social media consultant
Yep.
for living room conversations. That's right. Um, so great. All right. What are your goals next? What are your goals for yourself, for your practice, for the world, whatever? What are they?
Mm, such a beautiful question. I feel like right now I'm in a space of openness and
Mm,
surrender.
mm,
In the last 2 or 3 years, I was like, really clear, okay, this is what I want everything to look like and scripting it to be so to
mm-hmm,
say. And I have found some overwhelm with that recently. And so now I'm
mm,
like, universe, show me, just show me what's next, like, and paying attention to what shows up that feels in alignment.
mm,
So yeah, I'm in a
mm.
space of not trying to steer trying to
Great.
have like so much control because it's
Mhm.
an illusion anyways, and I stress myself out with that sometimes. And so I'm like trying to take my hands off the wheel a little
Mm,
bit and step back and see what magic and miracles want to unfold. So that's where I'm at right
mm.
now. But
It's lovely.
ultimately, just continuing to show up and be in service to collective healing and collective liberation
Mm,
in whatever ways that is manifesting in responding to the needs of community as it evolves. And so right now I'm really present to um, people's fear and overwhelm around this new administration that has come in the US.
mhm,
And so it's like, okay, I think people need a space to hold
mm,
that, to move through that. So that will
mhm,
probably be the next thing that I
mhm,
offer in the world. And
mm,
I desire to really support people who are leaders, people who are committed to social justice, embodying freedom
Mm, mm.
and leading from feeling whole, worthy,
Oh
divine,
my gosh.
returning to that innate truth that we were born with, whole, worthy, divine, just as you are, nothing to prove. So I want to
Mm,
continue to spread that message far and wide and witness the
mm.
ripple effects of that.
While you embody that at the same
Yes.
time.
Well, I have more fun along the way too.
Oh yeah, you're very ebullient. It's wonderful to watch you. Do you mind sharing what your spiritual practice is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am deeply connected to nature. Nature is
Mm,
a big part of
mm,
my spiritual connection and where I feel connected to my highest self, to my ancestors, my guides.
mm,
So I'm so grateful. I live with a river in my backyard.
mm,
I am there every day and have my little
mm,
talks with God and all of
mm.
my
Ugh,
guides in the mornings, and that's a
mm,
really grounding force. I have a
mm,
daily meditation practice, um, and
mm,
sometimes it's dance, sometimes it's the emotional alchemy journey, sometimes it's just
mm,
gathering and being in shared community with other people who
mm,
are on this path. So I think that it looks different day to day,
mm,
but really it's the spaces that help me drop into that space of clarity, of like clearing out the outside
mm,
noise, getting quiet, listening, being inspired by nature, being inspired by people doing good things. Um,
mm.
yeah, that was what I would share is kind of my spiritual practice.
Thank you. I want people to be inspired by that as well. Well, I feel like I'm at the end of the interview. So I think that's awesome.